I'm Bob Reeder, R-E-D-E-R, and this is Patrice.
My name is Wanda Simmons. I'm here representing the NAACP. I'm the education champion. I wear many hats in the community. I'm also a mom and a voter. Thank you.
Okay, you took my thunder away. Speaking about wearing hats, I have a lot of hats that I wear. I am a past chair of CREC, which is the Greater Hartford Magnet School Consortium. Again, longtime chair of the Bloomfield Board of Ed, and currently the recently elected president of CAVE.
State board.
Oh, that's right, yeah. I'm
Church?
also a member of the state board. I was appointed by Governor Lloyd 2 years ago. And I am also the chair of the deacon board at my church, Union Baptist in Hartford. So, I just want to read this off and say thank you for the request from Mike to come down, and we really want to get more involved with what's happening with Bridgeport and what services we can offer, what services we can help as you have a new leadership and begin to set your roles and responsibilities. Bob and Patrice have introduced themselves. You have a packet in front of you, which I'm sure Bob is going to deal with. Just kind of detailing all of the things that we do at CREC, anywhere from presenting a strong governance. Would I say something funny?
Yes.
Crack.
Oh, wow.
What we do is correct.
Hey. Okay. What we do at CAVE in the realm of professional development, school governance, advocacy, legislative priorities. We have already begun to get ready for the short session that's coming up with the legislature and setting our goals and what sort of, Patrice is although she is general counsel, she wears many hats too, is the assistant executive director. She is also the main person on Capitol Hill, both here and at the federal government in DC. We will all be, there's a crew of us that will be in DC in January, beginning of February, meeting with our legislators from Connecticut down there as well. But, you know, we're gonna start right here in the state with things that are important to us. And in terms of testifying in front of the legislature, in front of the school committee. And you know, we kind of hit the ground running, and we are very involved, and would love to have you guys come back with us. We often look at what we refer to as the Big Five in the state of Connecticut. And it's Hartford, Waterbury, New Haven, Stamford, and Bridgeport. And you guys are the only ones that are not a part of us right now. So our goal is to get, because we're stronger. We're stronger if we are one. You know, so. Anything else, Bob? Other than that, I'm gonna listen. Again, Bloomfield High as Class A can be. Again, she in high school at 11 o'clock, so if you see me slide out the door,
That's good stuff.
I'm going down to Trumbull.
I just want to say thank you guys for being here. I was fortunate enough at the Cape Caps convention to sit in on a breakout session with Patrice, and she is more than knowledgeable on all the topics that are going on and potentially, especially in this short session up at the legislature, that look out for the best interest of public schools. So, thanks for being here. And thank you, Bob. You and I met early on in the school year, but after my meeting with Commissioner a few weeks back, he was able to set this up and really make this happen. Dr. Cardona, I think, is going to do some great things for public education for kids here in the state of Connecticut, but particularly in the urban centers. I think he really understands the needs here, and for him to open his calendar to me, in a day's notice, just shows his commitment here to Bridgeport. So, that's all I really wanted to say. But thank you guys for being here today.
I think we've all felt a commitment to Bridgeport. It's been kind of difficult, as John knows in particular, working with Bridgeport when you're not a member, but we feel, I can speak for the staff and the board of directors, that when you're missing a district of 21,000 students, you're sort of missing what you need to do. Again, we are open. We're not sure how this relationship is exactly going to work, but know that you can call us at any time. You have questions. We do a lot of field service work. Today we'll get to some of the issues, maybe not in as much depth as you prefer, but we can always be reached by a phone call. Good morning. Morning. Can always be reached by we could be reached by a phone call, by email. There are a number of ways to reach us. And what I wanted to give you is just some information that hopefully is helpful to you as you go forward. I won't spend a lot of time on it because I do want to get to the agenda, of course. But we gave you information on parliamentary procedure, and as Patrice would tell you, we don't like to overly stick to parliamentary procedure, but at board meetings, when things get out of hand, sometimes you have to. Media tips, I think that speaks for itself. This is one of the most important things we do. Answers to questions that you may be asked of by a parent, just a member of the community, or even the press. And you can see, if you take your time reading it, sometimes a person will bypass the chain of command, will ask a board member to carry their water. You gotta be very careful about that, and we'll get into that later. But certainly, these are the types of answers you should give. As board members, there's nothing wrong with you listening to concerns or to issues, but your job is really to send the person through the chain of command that is set up in your bylaws or your policies. That's the way a professional board operates. Roles and responsibilities, obviously, all about the roles and responsibility of board members. As you go forward, board meeting guide, and that is. These are the new legislative priorities, and I'm sure Patrice can speak about. We just said this week, this is where we're going in our legislative work this week, and into the new session as Don was talking about. The basis of our training is basically based on. This is for the board. Well, if they don't come, glad to share it. This isn't private. It's not private, but it's not something you take away. It belongs to the board.
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow along.
Okay.
Is it possible something back?
Look at this.
Do we have something to share? Can I have something?
what boards and superintendents do together, such as push for the budget. It also talks about the roles of the superintendent and the roles of the board. And they're separate, but these are a collection of best practices. They're not, you know, legally, the state does not say, you must do this, you must do that, in most cases. It will just let the board and the superintendent work out their relationship and talk about, well, we think the chair should do this, or the superintendent should do that. So this is the basis of what we use. On the other side is information about CABE in general, and the journal that goes out once every month, 11 times a year. And sometimes now they're paper, sometimes they're digital, sometimes, usually they're both. But this is really helpful in keeping you up to what's going on around the rest of the state. So, with that said, let's get back to the agenda. And the first thing on the agenda was the question of, why did he get on the board? Why are you staying on the board? And I'd just like to hear from everybody what their chief reason for getting on the board was.
You want? I can start. You know, having a daughter that went through the whole school system and being a parent leader for all those years, you know, one thing I realized is the challenges that all our students face. And one of the things is, you know, a lot of parents are really not part of the decision making and not around the table. There's always parents missing when it comes to those critical conversations and where those decisions are being made. So that's why I decided to get really involved. And then, you know, of course, when you're on the board, then you realize, you know, when you're standing on that side of the fence, everything is like, and then when you're on this side and you get everything, it's like, whoa. So, you know, it's a process to differentiate all that and to, you know, but to be an advocate for all our students, it's what's important. And, you know, sometimes it's not all black and white. There's a lot of gray area, and, you know, you just try to make the best decisions possible, even though when they're not popular. But at that particular time, it's the best decision you can make.
Well, for me, as a parent as well, it started with a birthday invitation. My son had brought a birthday invitation to school, and he got called out because he did not give an invitation to every student in the class. And one of the teachers in the other classes came and called him out in front of the classroom and saying he hurt the kids' feelings by not giving them an invitation. So that got me to digging around the website, looking for the rule. But there was no such rule about party invitations in our thing. And then as I kept researching the website, seeing what else I was missing, I stumbled across my son's school is a magnet school with a focus on science. That they were attempting to change this science focus into a focus of social and emotional learning and sociology. Now, social and emotional learning and sociology, they're all fine and good, but if you look at the current state of America and where these science and STEM jobs go, they're not to minority students, of which our district is comprised. And I got involved to fight the change as a parent, and I got on the committee, the schools change committee, and I stopped that there. But as I started learning more and more about what was going on in the system and the inequities that have existed throughout the system, I started getting more and more disgusted and more involved. And it's like, sometimes I wish I could go back and just be a parent helping my son with his homework and go back to those days of blissful ignorance. Because once you know, you can't unknow what you know.
You want to just say why you got into education in the first place?
Great question. I got into education by accident. So I'm born and raised here in Bridgeport. I've lived 46 of my 49 years on this earth in this city. So as a graduate, when I graduated from the University of Bridgeport, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was pushed into an area, you know, by the adults that thought I should do something in life that I really didn't enjoy. So I remember every day, a good friend of mine would go down to the rec center at UB. We were playing basketball every day with the guys. And one day, he just happened to say he was going over to the College of Education to talk to the dean there regarding a program. So I said, all right, you're driving, so I'll attend the session with you and before we go over to the gym. And it was a program on education and a master's program. So long story short, I signed up. He went to go work with Pitney Bowes. And, you know, I started coaching baseball. I played baseball my whole life here through, you know, North End Little League, Spanish League down at Seaside Park. I mean, it was just something that I had a passion for, and as I was coaching baseball and in this program, I really enjoyed working with kids, and got a job as soon as I graduated after my internship over at McKinley School in Waltersville, and slowly I've just worked my way through the system to this point. It's been an amazing ride, to be honest with you. I could not have imagined sitting here today. This was never an intention of mine 10 years ago, but the need for consistency, the need for someone to bring stability and look out for the best interest of students and staff in this district has been something that I thought really needed to be a priority. And so I'm happy to be here today, and I'm happy to serve the kids and the families here in Bridgeport.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Continuing down
So we're gonna tell stories. I'll tell my story too. That's good. I like this. Mine actually started in a seminar-style class at the University of Florida, Latin American Liberation Theology, and it was, you know, University of Florida. The classes are like 200 students. This was like 20 students, so it was very intimate. And it was the end of the year. I was a junior, and the professor asked the seniors, "Tell the rest of the class what you're going to do." And this one guy, who I kind of admired, one student, said, "Oh, I'm applying for Teach for America." And it explained it. It struck a chord, and I found him in the quad later on after class and asked him about it. And long story short, I ended up getting into Teach for America. So I was not an education major. I was a pre-med major, and I ended up teaching for 2 years in Phoenix, 8th grade math. Then came back to the University of Bridgeport, did my master's, got certified in Connecticut, and then taught out in San Francisco area for a year, and then came back to Connecticut. And I've basically been in education now post-secondary for the last almost 22 years. So I work in post-secondary education. And why I'm here now, it's connected to, I'm re-enrolled at UB in the doctoral program in educational leadership. And we were having a discussion about boards of education across the state of Connecticut, and who is and who's not on a board of education. And I thought to myself, because I don't have any children, but I've been in education my whole life. I thought to myself, wow, that's who is and who's not on the board of education. I could be on the board of education. And literally the very next day, I got an email from Lee, which is Leadership and Educational Equity, saying, would you be interested in being on the Bridgeport Board of Education and running for it? It happened the very next day. So that's how I got on. Why I'm still here, why I ran and got elected, it's because of this guy right here. We actually had a conversation, you may not remember, but I was driving up to Worcester. I work out of state a lot. And I was debating if I should go on the board. I was an independent voter, but I realized I needed to join a party. And I was like, I don't know if I want to join a party and this and that. And he said, well, if you don't run, people will be let down. People will be disappointed. When he phrased it that way, I was like, really? Right? Me being there makes a difference? And that's what was the last straw that made me decide to run. And then the last thing is, I like it. Things like this, being a part of making important decisions for people, for the students and the families and everything else is important. So for me, it's a way to serve. I could also serve in a institution, which is just as honorable. This is the way I serve because I'm an educator. So,
Very cool. So you're still into Latin American history? See you.
Yeah,
Maybe you'd enjoy it because you have a background.
yeah, I'd have to pay.
I'm sorry I give you my name, but my kids are using
Yeah,
it.
give me your account. How many accounts do you have? That's it, so thank you.
Thank you. John?
Because I wanted to try to do what I could to try to quote unquote normalize for it. I have relatives who have worked in the district, and I saw in the news, in the early 2010s, 2013, 2014, the dysfunction that board meetings going to 11 o'clock, 12 midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. It was more in our lane, a lot more in our lane than we ever used to. And our superintendent is able to do what he needs to do because of that, because that kind of interference, the level of chaos that existed, meant that the superintendent wasn't able to focus their efforts on what they really need to be doing, because they're busy trying to corral this other animal that just wouldn't, this
My son moved to Johnson for 1 year, and then Columbus School 4 years, Kerrville School, Johnson School, Cesar Batalla School, and then we finished. My son graduated from Bassick High School. I was the PTA for 4 years there. Telling you, like, I'm having experience for almost like 17 years in the district. I see so many board members. Mr. Hernan, he was one of my best district PAC president, for the whole school and everything. But I'll deal with him, for so many years. And I say, and people tell me, why you don't run for the board? Why you don't run for the board? And I said, okay, it's time to run for the board. I want to know my passion is in my parents, my students, to be sure they have I know nothing is easy, but I know it's a protocol. With good communication, working together. I know we can make a lot of things. We can make a lot of change for Bridgeville School, and that's what I'm here for. To work together.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Introduce yourself, please.
Good morning, I apologize for my tardiness. I am from the student perspective. I actually went to Hardin High School. I served on the superintendent's youth board when Dr. Ramos was superintendent.
Wow.
And then I went away to college. I graduated high school. So with the superintendent board, he gave students an opportunity to talk about what was going on in their school districts, and I represented Hardin High School at the time. Which opened up our eyes to see exactly what it is that the superintendent does and the people that he works with. We actually had opportunity students on the board whenever they had meetings. We had an opportunity to talk about what we saw was happening in our school district. So that was Hardin, Bassick, Central, all the major high schools. So after that happened, I went away to school, came back, and I realized that some of the same things that were supposed to happen, take place for the students, didn't happen for them. And I started becoming more invested. I'm more community related, so I get a chance to work with kids all the time, and I get to hear their stories, their complaints, and stuff like that. communicate the information that we're learning here to our students, and to the younger parents, because my mom is, you know, she did her job, you know, not saying that her job is done with making sure that we are, you know, fought for and we get the things we need, but now my generation of friends have kids, and they don't understand. They understand what it's like to be a parent, but they don't understand that there's a whole community that helps get the resources that they need, and that they need to be a part of the conversation as much as possible. But understanding the conversation is what's so important, because you have different age gaps, and how we may interpret things in our language, they're looking at us like deers in headlights. They're like, well, what does that mean? So I want to be able to be that representation for them, and also to learn. You know, a lot of people, you know, thinking that this may not have been a good move, but I think, you know, anything to master anything, you have to learn to understand it and understand why some of the hardest decisions come from this board, and they don't understand that. And as a team, you know, working together to understand how we can make those hard decisions and not feel like, you know, we're keeping the community out and they don't know what's going on. So that's why I joined, and I'm excited to be here.
Can I have the first name again?
Bobby Brown. Bobby with an I, not a Y. B-R-W.
Oh, that's fine with me, because
I don't do makeup
white.
or I don't sing. just Bobby Brown.
You forgot to add that was 100 girls.
Oh, sorry. So in the city of Bridgeport last year, I hosted an event called #100GirlsLeading. I can't talk about any other gender but the gender that I am. So I decided to find an audience that would work and understand. So the bigger thing in Bridgeport is there's not a big thing for mentorship for boys and girls. Now we have something for the boys, and I want to do something for the girls. So every June, and this coming June, June 6th, I host an event. It's called 100 Girls Leading, but it was definitely our nose, not 100 girls there. It was 500 girls, almost 500 show up.
Wow.
Downtown
That's
McLeavy
amazing.
Green, and we had Congresswoman Johanna Hayes come in. So basically teaching the girls that there are women mentors, that they don't have to look to Beyonce or Cardi B. There's like really rock stars right here in their community that could really empower them, and it's one day for 4 hours of interactive mentoring. Because the girls, like I said, you listen to them. They were like, Miss, we're always in the classroom. We don't have no hands-on experience. So I was like, what if I create something for you? And we created one day for interactive mentoring, and it's right before, well, not right before, but last year was June 1st, this year is June 6th. It's that one girl party that gives them that idea. Hold on, school is almost over, and you got these things to look forward to. And this year we have in the school districts teaching students about
Like the role of the board in policy, certainly the experienced board members, including Don, can speak about their experiences and what happens here. The idea is not to tell you this is the only way to do it. This is just an orientation as well as a roles and responsibilities workshop. So the board, the role of the board is basically three things. Adopting a budget, and we know you have to go to the city council, and how difficult budgeting is in Bridgeport. We do keep up with what's in the newspapers and how difficult that is. The second thing is adopting policy. Policies are the sort of the laws of the school district. You adopt policies. It's what you do from a 30,000-foot level, setting the tone and direction of the district. I assume you've all seen your policy manual? Yes?
Yes.
Where is it kept? May I ask
Oh, I just look at the online version.
The online version, great.
It's
Great.
very easily
And
accessed.
it's kept up to date, and
I think maybe it's slightly behind. I think we gotta. I don't think the
But more or less up to date, and
student
you're-
elections. is in there.
you're going over it and so on, making sure it stays in sync with laws and regulations.
Yeah, we need to do a better job, and I think we just, we concentrated in our bylaws, but this year it's really time to concentrate on all the other series, the 5,000 with students, your staff and everything else. So I think this year we're gonna take a more deeper dive into the rest of the bylaws. Cause I'm a firm believer, our bylaws, they need to be ongoing, looked at and evaluated, because what might have worked today, 2 years from now, might not work. So they constantly have to be amended and to keep up with the times, as I would say. So this is the moment where we're gonna really try to look at those.
You have a policy committee,
Yep.
great, and they report to the board?
Yep.
Because years ago, I remember doing a retreat here, and the things went down to the policy committee, but there was no way to bring it back to the board.
Yeah, no, we're changing, we're gonna streamline all that, so.
Great.
You remember that, huh?
Yes, I do remember.
Yes, you do.
Were you at the meeting, Pernell?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
it
I
was
was.
The dinner was lovely, meeting not so great. And the third thing is the selection and support of and evaluation of your superintendent. Evaluations have to be done once a year, that's in the law. Evaluation, we generally suggest that you do it after you've done a self-assessment of the board. And we can certainly get you information about doing the self-assessment. We have an instrument we use. And the reason we suggest you do it with the board first is to make sure that you're all united, you're seeing things the same. When we get an evaluation, we look at it, it's anonymous, a survey is sent out to the board, then it comes to us, we aggregate it, and then we can come in and discuss it. And I use it as a teaching tool because if somebody thinks board meetings are very effective, 7 people say that and 2 say they're not effective at all, there's communications that's missing. There's a belief that don't jive, so to speak. So we can talk about that, but that's one of the things we do and really help the board with. And finally, termination, if necessary, of the superintendent. We know you're apparently going to go through another search. We can certainly talk about that, but at this time, let's move beyond that. Let's talk a little bit more about the thing I sort of skipped over, and that is the budget. Who comes up with the budget? What's your timing? What happens? I know it's very political here, but everybody has to know at least what the process is. You might want to talk to what the process has been as far as the setting of the budget and adopting it, John?
It's typically, in recent years, been, wait on things needed. County is gonna, with the city, is gonna allocate for this, is increase, flat funded. And then once we have that number, I think we at the board level has been a little too involved in it. I think the CFO should take more of an overall, this is how I have designed our budget to live within the constraints that we have to live in. Do you accept it or not? If there's something you dislike about it, please tell me. That's the way it should be. The way it has been is we've been given a choice of what to cut. We at our level, what to cut to get to where we're living within what's been allocated to us. I personally don't think that's our role. In other public agencies where they've had similar circumstances that I've been involved in, the staff determines, they make the best recommendation. These are I have a transportation background, and so I worked for the transit authority in staff comes up with a mix of fare increases, budget cuts, staff reductions, service reductions, realigning bus routes or eliminating them. They come up with a package to get the budget within the confines of their funding. And then they present it to the board. And unless there's something wildly out of alignment, the board says, oh, okay, thank you, done your job. And I think it's the board's role to just look to see, is there something fundamentally wrong with the budget you present? Are you going to be disparaging the public in some regard? And that should be the board's focus, not as it has been, for us to decide what positions should remain, what positions should be eliminated, who keeps a job, who doesn't keep a job. I don't think that's our role, but that's been practice in the past.
Yeah, I see us as probably the exact opposite, not involved as much in the budget process. We've got a budget half the size of the city, basically. And the city, when they're working on a budget, they meet over 30, 40 hours. We barely have 7 or 8 finance meetings throughout the year, and we don't look at it. Ms. Siegel gives us a good document to start with. What happens is sometimes there's cuts on there that we don't like, and we say, no, you can't have this because we don't like it, because maybe we got a phone call, a couple of phone calls from the public saying, no, we can't do this, we can't do this. And then we say, no, we don't like this. And then she asks for an alternative. But we as political creatures are afraid to offer an alternative because we're going to get those phone calls again.
Let me ask you something. Do you prepare a budget?
No, we do not. We just criticize the one that gets in front of us.
That's a great question, because I think there's a multifaceted gap here in what's been done and what is best practice. To sit back and wait for the city to create a budget and then not be happy with it, and then rant and rave about not receiving enough funding has been kind of the practice, as John mentioned. Being proactive and going to the city prior to them setting the budget to explain to them and detail to them the need of the school district as it relates to providing students with what they need is what should happen and what needs to happen. Because once they set their budget and say to the board, we'll give you $1 million, you're not getting any more than that. And if the last 10 years hasn't shown us that they're not going to give you any more, I don't know what else you need. I mean, we've been beaten over the head with underfunding as a result of hoping and praying rather than going and being proactive, from my point of view, from the superintendent's office, from the board perspective, in creating a partnership that gets us to a point where we can be satisfied with getting enough funds that we can provide the proper education in the classroom for our kids.
Okay, because that one comment that he made where he referenced the board gets about half as much as the town or the city budget. That's a really disturbing figure, because most districts,
Can I just clarify? I think he meant that the overall city's budget is split pretty evenly between
It is.
the district and the rest of the city. So we get half of the overall
okay.
city allocation.
I think what he meant is the city budget's $500 million. The Board of Ed budget is $251 million. The majority of that, we all know, comes from the state of Connecticut. The portion that comes from the city is roughly 15% of their budget, because
Because most districts now are in the process right now, they probably
Correct.
began the process in October.
correct. And we are beginning that process now.
Preparing their budget for submittal to the town. And which, in my my district, that's what we've been doing since October. This coming Tuesday, I'm meeting with my superintendent and the town manager and the mayor, just to begin a conversation.
Correct.
On, just how are we going to get along?
Correct.
In this finance year.
And Don, to your point, we've begun informal conversations already.
Good.
So they have an understanding of what we need.
Are they receptive to it?
I think thus far, yes.
Good.
I think what becomes the issue, and what I've noticed in the preliminary discussions, is that when you start to give them specifics, that's where the resistance comes. So I think it's overall just presenting what percentage of an increase we need from the city to not only maintain but enhance services for kids, and not get into the specifics of adding a custodian, because then it becomes, okay, well, we don't want you to do that, we don't want, then it becomes a micromanagement issue.
They don't get to do that.
Correct. And I think part of the other historical issue becomes what is personal to people, and to look beyond what is personal and what's best for all kids. Because if we're going to cut funding to an athletic program, I'm just going to use that as an example because you mentioned the football game before. You may have one board member or two board members whose children played sports, so that's important to them. And a science program may not be important to them because their child didn't like science. Well, we have to put that aside and say what's best for the overall education of our kids and not what is personal to me. So I think that's been one of the things, when you go line item by line item, it becomes a personality issue and not an overall what's best for students issue. And until everyone kind of puts that aside and says what's overall better for kids in the classroom to learn, we'll be at this point where we're never going to move forward. We're never going to bring the district to a fiscal place that is responsible for educating our kids. And that's just my 25 years in Bridgeport sense of it.
Yeah, I think this is an area that we definitely are struggling with. And, I've been on the board for quite a while, and I've been with our acting superintendent now. It's probably my fourth superintendent I've worked with. And, in the previous years, it's always been a process. We involve the community in part of creating that budget, which I think it's important, and we need to get back to that. So those meetings really should start in January, where we're having meetings with the community and have community input, and then we start to really put that budget together and present. But behind the scenes, we're having a conversation. We're having a relationship. We're having with the city. Where in previous past, it's like, oh no, the city is the enemy. We do not touch. We do not talk. We do not. And a lot of people in the community expect that. And that's just wrong, because as much as I may not agree with everything that's done on the city side, we still have to work with them. It's still our responsibility to work with them. Because we could fight all day long, but you know who's going to suffer? Not me, not the mayor. It's going to be the students. And that's what people seem to forget all the time. It's always about this. And that's where we just got to stop and continue that dialogue, because regardless, we got to work at it, and we got to work together regardless of what our differences are. So what I've struggled with in the last couple of years, and I really struggled with it last year, where I kind of just blew up in one meeting, I have to admit. It's here's the budget, this is what we got to cut, this is what I'm proposing to cut. And it's like, where in previous years, we were given A, B, C, whatever, different scenarios, and there's cons and pros to that. And we look at every option. If we cut A, these are the cons, these are the pros. B is the same thing. Well, the last couple of years is, here, this is your package, if you like it. And God forbid, if we didn't like it, then it was like, okay, board members, you decide what needs to get cut. And as board members, when you start to get, that's when it becomes personal. Because you know what? We are not the pros. We are not the ones working in the trenches every single day. They know them, so we really depend on them, and then do our work and do our homework behind the scenes to make those decisions. So, me as a board member and as vice chair, I would really love to, and if something comes out of this in the very near future, maybe put something together and looking at what the best practices are around the state and other boards of education on what they do on their budget season and how they prepare budgets and how they go their process in finalizing budget. Because I think it's important. I think we need to go back to the basics when it comes to that and develop a plan that we can follow every single year. I mean,
Before you go, Joe, but see, that's the mentality is we have to cut every year. And until we get to a point where it's unacceptable to continue to cut, and we go into the budget season with, this is what we need, period. And work with us on getting what we need, and not automatically assuming, all right, we're going into the cut season.
The dollar figure that they're giving you, is it broken down?
No.
They just give you a dollar figure?
Yes.
And say, you put the money where.
Correct, and that can't be.
Okay, because I'm trying to figure out.
Correct.
And also telling you where to spend the money.
no,
No, right.
they would like to sometimes.
They would like to, but they can't.
And can I jump? Let me jump in for a minute, please, because we just hit on a couple of points of maybe a little respectful agreement with Ms. Nelling's-Orth. In those past budgets where you had those choices and those menu choices, there was still meat on the bone. We down to the bone. It's critical now. And as far as getting along with the city side and all of that, us bringing pressure on them, really, in my opinion, does not work. Where they need the pressure is from the public and the voters, because if they don't fear the public, if they don't fear the voters, they will not act. They will not do this. And as far as the city and people getting involved, we cut buses last year. They put $1.2 million into buses and refused to put it into the MBR. They refused. So for anybody to sit here and say the city doesn't get involved and tell us what to do with our money, they told us to put those buses back and not use that money for anything else by paying that money directly to the bus company through their flow-through. And next year we're starting, in my opinion, that $1.2 million of services that we can't afford. And as you see, it's a frustrating conference. And we do get budgets early. We get three scenarios. If we get an extra $2 million, if we got to cut 5, if we got to cut 10. Marlene prepares that every year.
No cuts.
And I would love to see no cuts. I would love to see no cuts.
With all due respect, I don't think that saying there was meat on the bone, we are left with no direct, no Department of Curriculum in this district.
At all.
We are limited in intervention for kids. I mean, there hasn't been meat on a bone in years.
And as a leader before we the board, and I see so many how they cut the budget. What I'm not getting frustrated when they start cutting budgets, when they cut the budget for low income people. And when I say low income, it's including security, custodians, cafeteria. All these people, they get very stressful when they cut a budget, because when they start with the security, it hurt me, because this is the first to respond how something happened in school. And then we got high school, we have a big school, so we got 1,000 kids, 900 kids, stuff like that. And when they start, people like that hurt me. If you want to start cutting budget, people, let's go for the people from the top. I'm doing this one, I'm in the district for 17 years, and I know how many staff is around in the building. We got people there, they're sitting down, you got 3 or 4 secretaries, you got people extra. Then I said, okay, you want to cut budget, let's go for the people on the top. Do not go to the people have low income. They hurt me a lot. And I'm going back what Mr. Hernandez said. It was a lot of communication, you know, back and forth and stuff like that. But I know this year with the new board and with the amazing team we have, we're gonna be working much better.
Yeah,
It's a lot of
there's no doubt about
communication now. The city right now, the city council right now, they happy who we are, you know, and we starting to communicate each other very, tend to Mr. Destani, you know, the way he tried to communicate with us. And now it's gonna be much better. That's why we have to leave the past. They could be present and with good communication. I spoke with sometime with the city council, the president, and I told, listen, I would love you to talk to Mr. Destani. We can have a meeting up to one time in a month, us talking, you know, little by little. Not every time the last moment. Because you have things last moment, everybody go crazy, you know, stuff like that. Let's to be talking for, you know, in advance. But we're gonna be much better this year. I know we will.
Good. I'm gonna turn over to Patrice.
I'll just make a couple of observations on the budgeting process. We did put together a document that I'll send to you, Mike, on working with the School Business Officials Association about budgeting best practices. It doesn't answer every question for every community, but my overall observations from this discussion and the work we do with boards all over the state, the communication is key. The building of relationships is key. Even if it's frustrating, even if you're not sure, you don't give up on that. But also, this is a major part of your advocacy role as board members.
Amen.
Your budget is your biggest policy statement, because that says what the priorities of the district are. And if you don't advocate for the needs of the students, there's not another governmental body in the city that has that responsibility. So, and it's a year-round process. It can't start, you know, when you're ready to present the budget or when you get the dollar figure from the city council. You've got to be communicating year-round about what the needs of the students are, why there are needs for more supports for students in the building. All of those things have to be laid out. That doesn't mean you're gonna get every dollar you need, no board. We've never worked with a board that said, boy, we are all set, we got everything we need, and we can meet the needs of every child to the level that we want to be able to do. But it's a building process. So I encourage you to pursue that. The role of the board member is something we're gonna talk about with a little bit of specificity. Education in Connecticut is a constitutional right. The state legislature has delegated responsibility for that constitutional right to local and regional boards of education. So that's a large mandate that you have from the state. Now that, of course, is part of what sometimes creates tension and conflict at the local level, because you're working with your city, but you have this state responsibility, and they're not always in harmony. As an individual board member, when you first got elected, you probably encountered citizens who, and maybe you still do encounter citizens, who believe that as an individual, now you can fix things. Whatever it is, okay, yes?
Still got board members who think
So
that.
wherever you are in the community, they will say, well, why can't we get rid of those ineffective teachers in my child's elementary school? You're gonna do that now for me, right? No. Why can't we institute smaller class sizes in grades K through 3? You know, you're gonna fix that now, because we just
Joe wanna get us
do
$1
it,
million
right?
for that.
You got elected because you care about the students of Bridgeport. One of your important responsibilities is to help the community understand that you only have power when you come together as a body in a meeting. So that doesn't mean that you don't hear their concerns. That doesn't mean that you don't sometimes bring those concerns to the board table as you're thinking about decision making. But what you can do is help those community members understand, well, where do I go with this specific concern I have? So I'm a 3rd grade mom, and I think there's terrible classroom management in my child's class, and no one's able to learn because the classroom is out of control. So you, as a board member, say to that parent, well, have you talked to the classroom teacher? Yes, and she's just, nothing ever changes, it doesn't get any better. Well, have you talked to the building principal? That's an appropriate place for a parent to go. You've still not, yes, talk to the building Well, have you talked to the assistant superintendent or the superintendent? Have you put a call in to say, I have these concerns, would you talk to me? What you don't wanna do is say, oh, I'll bring this issue up at the next board meeting about Mrs. Smith, the third grade teacher, or, oh, I'll go observe your child's class and see what's happening so that I understand firsthand. That's not your role, and it's very important that you build that understanding in the community, that that's not the role of a board member. Mike?
Is it appropriate to say, I will call the superintendent or assistant superintendent on your behalf?
It is not best practice.
Okay,
It
thank
is
you.
definitely, what you wanna do is empower, by helping guide a parent, you're empowering that parent.
Correct.
So that they know, so maybe next time they have a concern, they realize it's okay to send an email to my child's teacher and say, could I set up a meeting? I'm concerned about what's happening in the class. That empowerment is key. Sometimes superintendents will say, listen, if you're hearing a whole lot of things about the same issue in a community that I, as sitting in the superintendent's office, may not be aware of, great, give me a call and just give me a heads up.
Right.
But not give me a call and say, I want you to fix this problem in the third grade class. That's a big difference. Yep.
Here's something interesting thing I face as a parent. When I talk to this teacher, I got to take a step back, and sometimes I won't even speak to the teacher. I'll let it go through my wife. And there's times where I got to walk a fine line where I see a problem in my son's class, and I'll back off, and then I'll look at it and say, wait a minute, this problem is not only affecting my son's class, not only it's affecting 500 students who flow through that class and 500 students who flow through the school. So I got to decide at which point it starts becoming a parent problem or a school-wide problem, and what type, and how to elevate that in a manner without bypassing my roles. As sometimes as a board member, I'm less effective in my son's school because before I would pick up the phone, I would call the principal and call the superintendent, and I used to have that access just as a parent advocate, which I've lost as a board member.
You actually haven't lost it.
No.
Yeah, but it's a fine
And
line.
what Patrice is saying is absolutely correct. Now, I will tell you what Don Harris may do in Bloomfield, which is maybe a little step away from, if I'm presented out there at the supermarket, at the Stop and Shop, with a parent who will call me or present me with something really critical that I think could potentially blow up, I will tell the parent, have you talked to the teacher? Have you talked to the principal? Have you talked to the assistant superintendent? And if you haven't, this is the route you need to take.
Right.
Now, as a board chair, I'm gonna call the superintendent myself. Give him a heads up to expect a phone call.
Right.
You may have a problem brewing at such and such a school, expect a phone call. But he is the educator. You know, I have the advantage or disadvantage. I spent 39 years in the school system, so I am an educator, but I don't take that upon myself as I'm the expert.
Right.
The superintendent is the expert. Board members, we are not. And, everything should funnel through the superintendent. I could talk some more on the role of the board chair, but,
The heads up phone calls are much appreciated. I mean, trust me, anytime a board member has called in the last 6 months and said, I want to give you a heads up, it is much appreciated because then I could be proactive. And parents have been very appreciative of getting a phone call from me rather than them have to call me first. And it's usually something that can be easily rectified with a little care and a little concern based on the adults, whether it be the teacher, the principal, the assistant principal. And sometimes it's just a miscommunication in many cases of I didn't express what I needed, or the principal didn't understand the need, but those phone calls of the heads up are always appreciated because it's better than later on, you know, the
Give them
demand,
anxiety.
right? Because Don calling up and demanding something doesn't always go over too well.
I know.
And it puts me in a bad spot.
Exactly.
So expect a call from my wife.
Right.
That's
So
okay, I'll
the whole
talk to her
issue of
anytime.
Perception, and when you talk about, you know, you sometimes had your wife have a discussion with the teacher instead of you doing that. The perception is not just the members of the community, but the staff in the buildings.
Mhm.
When you walk into a building now, even though you've been the parent volunteer and active in all of your children's schools, when you walk into the building now, it's the Bridgeport Board of Education
Yes,
walking into the building.
100%.
It is not that helpful, wonderful parent. So you have to be very sensitive to that, and sensitive to the environment that you
Yeah.
are unintentionally creating, but it's very real.
Right, definitely.
When you go visit, we always say to board members, you should visit schools in the community, you should go to their celebrations and, you know, athletic events, whatever it may be. But when you go into a school, you are a visitor, just like any member of the community, and you need to conduct yourself that way. So whatever the protocol is for visiting, and often it's, you know, if you want to walk around the building, you call the principal in advance and say, you know, I'd like to come, what would be a good time for me to come, so that someone can be with me and show me if you're concerned about, for instance, the facility itself and what the conditions are. Well, when would it be not disruptive to the students for me to come in? Because again, it has to all go back to what's best for the students, not about what the adult needs of the moment are.
We actually have, our own protocol is, you have to get the superintendent's permission
Yep.
before you go, before you even interact with any staff member. Because of that perception, that people, you know, I've been approached when I was chairman by staff people. They approached me, just out in the world. Yeah, and they're fearful of you. They are careful when they're around you. So it's very real. And you know, I'm just John. I'm not somebody you need to be afraid of. But they feel that way, and especially if you proactively approach them, they can feel really intimidated. And so even if you did just call up a principal and say, I'd like to visit the school, if this other layer, if this other check didn't exist, that principal would probably be inclined to just roll over because they're afraid of what is going to happen if they say, well, today's not a good day. Am I going to be retaliated against in some way because I didn't accommodate? So we've put this mechanism in place so that he can call the school and say, would tomorrow be a good day? It's not a good day? How about the next day? Okay, and then it's all brokered through him so that everybody at the staff level is able to feel a level of comfort with their interactions with board members. And it's happened in the past where board members had not very good intentions, and he's able to protect the staff. If he knows somebody's just got an axe to grind and is out to get somebody, he's the wall, and he can say, I'm not going to let you visit that school, and I have my own reasons, and he can do that. So we've set that in place.
And the same thing actually applies to requesting documents or records or reports. You have no authority as an individual any more than a citizen. So yes, under the Freedom of Information Act, there are certain rights that every citizen has to documents that are public records. But as a board member, you should be looking for that information through your superintendent. Because again, the intimidation factor, even if you don't want to, even if you want to be just John, if you went into the school the finance director's office and asked for something, you know, someone there might feel, well, I better give it to him because, you know, he's the board. That has to come through the information that the board needs should be provided by the superintendent and made available to all of the board members, not to individuals. Because if it's important enough for one board member,
Board meeting, we want a copy of,
yep,
we want a copy of our most recent proposal in the collective bargaining negotiation. We want to see where you're at with that. So we asked for that as a group at the board meeting. And then, hopefully, by the next meeting, he's giving it to us. And then we're gonna talk about it as a group, as opposed to individual requests for, I'd like to see this, I'd like to, if it's something you want to see as a board member, bring it up at the board meeting and say, I think we should see this. And if the group agrees, we get it.
exactly.
That's okay. Before being a board member, I always go to school to help leaders about the budget, the PAC and PTS, and the money and everything. And the other day, I have an experience that I have to let them know, Mr. Testani, I'm going to school. I just want to help his parents. I don't want the school or the principal thing. I'm watching him, like you said, maybe they get scared. The principal didn't know me, so I will let him know first. So just in case he give a call or something like that, the reason I went over there to help a parent. But it's very strange because a lot of people now, they call me and I gotta let them know, listen, now it's different. I cannot show up just like that. I gotta let them know the superintendent the reason, stuff like that, because I'm a board member, I don't want the staff or the principal think, oh, board's in the building, have to be careful. It's just something change very, 360 degree
Yep.
to try to help another people. Yeah.
Absolutely, but recognizing that there is that distinction now in your role as a board member, that's critical, because that's what's gonna,
Yeah.
that's what's gonna raise the red flag to you of, whoop, wait a minute, I've gotta help this parent understand that I can't serve in that role, because I have a broader role. I have a responsibility to all of the students in Bridgeport. I was gonna let Don talk about the role of the board chair so that we make sure that happens more.
Yes, I mean, excuse me, is that the board chair?
Yes.
So he's happy that.
He is right.
But you should really hear it too.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to realize that, and what I've been trying to do and the staff has been trying to do is create a more collaborative, a culture of collaboration, a culture that's positive, because that trickles down to our students. I can tell you as an employee for a long time, there's been ebbs and flows, but there's been a consistent level of fear and intimidation. And I think that's what John mentioned, from a board member to a superintendent to executive staff. When you come into a building, everyone's on high alert. And that's just no way to work. That's no way for kids to go to school. So as we try to chip away at that, as you can tell, it's not easy. I mean, and so it's important that people see you as a human being, as a support to them, because they're the ones, especially the teaching staff, that are in front of our children 6.5 hours a day. And as everyone's aware, we lose between 100 and 130 teachers a year for a variety of reasons. But some of it is because they don't feel that they work in an environment that's their work is appreciated. That's that it's a culture that you want to keep giving to our kids, because they all come here with great intentions. And I think the adults are the ones that a lot of times that puts an undue stress upon them. So I'm glad we talked about that.
And the whole issue of culture also gets to the issue of civility.
Correct.
You set, as a board, you set a tone for your community. 2 years ago, our delegate assembly, the members of CABE, adopted a resolution calling on public officials at all levels of government, starting perhaps at the federal level, to conduct themselves in a civil manner, to set an example for the students. And frankly, we have seen, particularly in Connecticut, some great examples of student leaders and student voice. And clearly, when boards are able to have respectful discussions where differing points of view are heard that then conveys to the public that that's the tone we use at our board meetings. And you can come during public participation and make comments, and you will be listened to, but you will do so in a respectful manner, because that's the culture of the board. And that very much then translates to what's the culture in your buildings. That's the atmosphere you want to create for your students. So leading by example in that area is almost as important as what happens in the budget.
Let's go back. Patrice sort of got into the next subject, and
Yeah,
we're
but I
gonna
wanted
talk
to do-
more about it.
yeah.
I understand why. Why don't we talk about the role of the board chair now? We asked Don to come in, specifically to talk about this, because he chairs a lot of things.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, thank you
Welcome.
for coming, Madam Chair.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'm sorry that I'm late. Father is currently in hospice, so it was a rough weekend.
I missed part of your presentation, Patrice, but,
She was right.
huh?
She was right.
Usually is.
She usually is. That's right. Women usually are.
Oh,
I've kind of touched on some things already as in my role as board chair, board member. But I've also said to you that I'm the chair of my deacon board. And my role as the chair of the deacon board, or my role as a group of deacons, is to uphold the arms of the pastor, is to keep the fireflies, keep people away from him so he can do his job, all right? I see this role as a board chair, I see this role as members of the board very similar. Our job is to uphold the arms of the superintendent. He's our only employee.
That's right.
That's the only employee that you have control over. He has the rest of the school system. All too often, and you've heard this around, board members come in and think they can go after this principal, go after this teacher, go after, that's not your job. Your job is to support your superintendent. Your job is to make sure you evaluate your superintendent. Bob talked earlier about the board self-evaluation. I don't know if you've ever gone through that practice, but that's a very worthwhile experience. That you develop this document, and I don't have it with me, but we developed our own self-evaluation document. It's about maybe 8 or 9 pages long. So yearly, we evaluate ourselves. Are we doing what we said we?
of the superintendent. And there is actually the self-evaluation form on page 9. And as I said at the beginning, we try to push best practices where we don't have any policing authority or regulatory authority, but we would encourage boards to go through this and then see where you stand on the various issues and see if there are big conflicts within what is asked there. So, go ahead, Don, and but you got a form already.
You got the form, and again, we're available. We want to help you to succeed. But I can't stress it enough that your superintendent is the educational leader. He's the one you all have to stand in front of, stand behind, stand to his side, and help him or let him do his or her job.
Board chair.
Board chair. Your responsibility as board chair is to run an effective meeting. I did take time. to set the tone at all of our meetings. I open the meeting, Pledge of Allegiance. We have an agenda. The next thing after the Pledge of Allegiance is that I will have our secretary read this script. And this sets the tone. This says to people what they can't do, my expectations for decorum, how we're gonna run this meeting. And I'm not banging my gavel a lot. Maybe my voice has something to do with it. Maybe the fact that I've been in Bloomfield all of my adult life. I've worked there, so I'm kind of well known in Bloomfield. We all have public comment at our meetings, okay? And this should be set forth in your policy handbook. And you talk about needing to do a deep dive in your policy. You know, we also provide audit for your policy book. But public comment, anybody who wants to speak, I give them 2 minutes. There are some boards that we give them 5 minutes. I've had council, council folks who give them 10 minutes. I give you 2 minutes. And come and say what you have to say. I'm not gonna respond back. The superintendent takes notes on what they're saying, because it's usually a concern will come, and the superintendent will address them. So I thank people, you know, welcome, come to the board, stay your 2 minutes, and I'm gonna time it. So if you go over that 2 minutes, okay, wrap it up. It's time to move on. And the superintendent will respond to that. Other than that, I mean, I run my meetings efficiently. I'm usually out of my meetings maybe an hour and 15 minutes, hour and a half maybe. And that's a long meeting for me. So we come, do our business, and we're out the door. I know I'm forgetting something, because I didn't.
Let me talk and you'll remember what you're saying. We've spent a lot of time on the board chair and the board chair's role. And the importance of the board chair's role. And Don certainly discussed the most public of the board chair's role, and that's running the meeting. But what we talk about is also, it's the board chair's responsibility to get to know the other people on the board, to get to know their interests. Why did they get on the board? What is the specific issue that really drives them? His book put out years ago, and it talked about corporate boards, but boards of education are the same. And that is interests drive actions. That was the thrust of the book. And it's all about, John might be interested in gifted and talented, and others are interested in the football team, and some is all about English literacy or working with EL students. It's the board chair's role to get to know the people, usually by one-on-one meetings, which is certainly allowable under FOIA, and sort of bring all the voting 8-1 or 8-0, 9-0 in this case. If you're voting 9-0 on every single thing, that indicates to me there isn't a lot of disagreement on the board, but also we only need one board member if you're gonna vote the same. The reason you're set up as a board with 9 people is to hear about your different experiences, what you're hearing, what you believe in, what your skills are. That's the idea of having a big board as opposed to one person just running everything. So don't be afraid to disagree, but as Patrice mentioned, civilly work together, work through the board chair who has to be decisive on on, you know, if a board member is out of line, and let's face it, we've seen that. When that happens, it's the board chair's job to try to reel that person back in, but the board chair needs the support of all the other board members in order to do it.
The other thing is, as board chair, you know, I try to make sure I've communicated, as Bob talked about, and I keep communication up via text or email with everybody, and I try to keep them informed. But on the same note now, again, talking about your superintendent, you are a 9-member board. The last thing your superintendent needs is 9 board members calling him. You know, you should coordinate through your chair. If you've got an issue that you need to bring up, coordinate that through your chair. Because the superintendent has a tough enough job as it is without having to address 9 board members calling him. We have committees.
That's what
I have a finance committee, a policy committee, and a curriculum committee. All right, we meet once a month, all at the same time, and I say at the same. There's a 6 o'clock policy meeting.
And then we get maybe 1 or 2 board members who haven't shown an interest in the item until it comes up, and then like seeing the document for the first time, and then asking questions about almost every line item on there, and that'll cause things to drive on. And we may have to even come to a compromise at the meeting because this board member feels strongly about something that they just noticed that they could have noticed a couple of steps back.
See,
Right.
that should have been done
At the committee level.
And like I said, most of my board is there. Maybe the finance committee, it's only 3 that are on it, but anybody can participate.
And everybody
Only
gets
3 can
to-
vote, but everybody can participate.
And everybody gets the documents ahead of time and they can peruse them and ask the questions.
That's-
They even
that's-
send a question to the chair if they wanted the chair of the committee to have that question answered. And I think that's something we should really
Right. And-
focus on going forward.
And that's an area where we have to do a better job as a group and as a board that we, even though we may not be on a specific agenda, we should all be urged ourselves to attend every single, because that's where all the work happens. And sometimes we barely get the members that are supposed to be there to show up to the committee meeting. But then in the other case, we've had instances where a particular board member that has been on that committee, vetted everything else, and then still wants to create a grandstand situation on the regular board meeting as well. So,
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And that's what I was
exactly.
going to say.
Right.
A lot of times I'm guilty. I'm the finance committee chair, and I'm guilty of just saying, you know what? Let's just push this to the full board, because if we're going to have a 3-hour conversation right now and a 5-hour conversation at the board meeting, because one particular board member likes to filibuster every meeting, it's like, I don't have the personal time for that. So let's stay focused. So a lot of times I'm guilty of that too, where it's like, if it's not going to be a focused situation and everybody's not going to have the ability to take part in it, then move it to the full board.
But like Ms. McCarty said, with communication, it's not this accepting. No, we cannot
Right.
go forward.
Right.
Like you said earlier, you said communication is the key.
It
But
is.
now we're gonna have communication. I know we're gonna have better, better board, better meeting.
And if, as chair, if there is a consensus among the board that, for instance, filibustering won't be tolerated, that the tenor is everyone gets to offer their comments, and then if it's an action item, you move, the chair calls for a vote on the item. And people are told, if you've already expressed your viewpoint on this,
Moving
and
along.
it hasn't changed
Yeah.
during the course of the discussion, you don't need to reiterate
thank
it.
you.
And that's an appropriate role for the chair, but the rest of the members of the board have to back up the chair.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Don.
But the rest of the members of the board have to back up the chair.
Yeah, and on that note, I'd just like to point out, before the question is called, every board
Everybody's
member
voice.
should have a chance to speak.
Yes.
No,
So,
good,
yeah.
100%.
We had that
100%.
conversation yesterday.
Yes.
But one
But
board,
again, just a
one board
reminder.
person, one board member should not be
Done.
doing all the talking, and that's where it's happened, where because she doesn't or he doesn't want a particular item to pass, he or she will make sure that she'll speak all night because
And then
it's
bring
my
up
right
things
to
from
speak.
20 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago. Who cares? We're talking about today, and how do we create sustainable change? Do we want this? Do we not? Let's vote. You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Can I offer a suggestion? I offered this a lot of meetings,
Yes.
even when that person was here. Let's move forward.
right.
Forward. We
Right.
don't need to rehash in the past.
Good job,
Let's just keep forward with new board, new
And I would
direction.
also observe that, and this is not a comment specific to Bridgeport, people don't make the best decisions at 11 o'clock at night. As adults, you've already
We're
dealt with
babies.
your families,
Not getting to
getting
that.
children where they need to be, your jobs, your parents, and now you're gonna make important decisions and it's 11 o'clock?
Even at jobs, specifically for my job, once you leave the office, there is no discussing any work after that, or if you're on vacation, because they want you to be free mind, free day, because you can make a decision sparingly because you're upset or whatever.
Right,
and,
right.
and literally, it does no good to the board, it does no good to the community, and it's like you made that out of anger or you made that out of exhaustion.
Yep.
And I just think it doesn't do us any good at all.
Agreed. The same applies to our state legislature, by the way. I haven't quite been able to convince them that decisions at 3 in the morning are not necessary.
5 a.m. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So as to not make this all, what I was worried it might be a lecture from us, I'm just gonna give something out that we don't have to go over, but at some point, if you wanna go over it, it'd be a good idea. I'm talking about policy and administration on your agendas. Policy is the board's job, administration is the superintendent's job, working with the rest of the staff. So what these are a bunch of questions about who should make the various decisions, whether it's the job of the superintendent or the job of the board. I don't want to belabor the points, but we see
Oh,
it.
this is a good thing, though. This is really good.
If you'd like to go through it, I mean, we certainly can.
I think we should.
Then
I mean,
that's fine.
with everybody
And-
else.
And there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer, it depends on the board.
This is a big one.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I'm glad, this is out of a book.
Can I take, like, before you start, like, 1 minute?
Let's have a 5-minute break.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. The one thing just before we break, I think there's something that needs to one thing I want to clarify. Like you said, the board has responsibilities. The administration then is placed upon the superintendent. I think some folks also have to understand that the superintendent doesn't make the decisions at every level. There's a hierarchy so when it comes to the evaluation of a teacher, or a paraprofessional, or the hiring of a teacher, it's not done by the superintendent. I think sometimes the public feels, because of the job, that the superintendent's involved in all of those things. And with 3,000 employees, there are processes and policies that are put in place to hire, the JV basketball coach or the freshman baseball coach that has nothing to do with the individual here. But there's this misconception that